Hi everyone, in this short video we're just going to talk about the valuing of your business and the approaches that sort of determine what that value might be. There's a lot of internal and external contributing factors of value for a business. So if you're kind of wondering where your business might sit on the market, then stick around and watch this short video and we'll go through a few of those factors that help you understand. Thanks. Okay, so when it comes to valuing your business, there are several methods or approaches that we can take in the small business market. The most common one though is called capitalization of future earnings. Now, what that means basically is we look at what the business makes for yourself and we normalize it. So we put in, if you're involved in the business and you're paying yourself above market rate or below market rate, we make that adjustment. You might own the building, and if you're paying yourself above or below market rate, we might adjust that. Small things like some motor vehicle costs, interests in any financial loans, depreciation, might pay another family member for tax purposes, and your super. And we sort of get to the end of that, and we put all that back on the bottom of the profit loss, and then we'll have your annualized earnings. A couple other approaches are net tangible assets. So if those earnings aren't too high, but you've got a lot of assets in the business, these can depend on the liquidity of those assets. Trucks and cars are easier to sell than, say, really obscure plant and equipment. But they're your two main ones in small business. And thirdly, well, there is one other, it's called cost to create. And you sort of get the idea of that. If it's especially hospitality, it's sort of not making much money and someone's going to offer them an amount that it might take them to set up that business. But in this video, we'll just focus on capitalization of earnings because that's the most common approach that most small to medium businesses take when they go to market. So once you have your earnings that you've figured out, the next step would be to likely to make a multiplier to that. Now, a common misconception is done often by accountants for some reason is just a multiple of 3. That really doesn't exist anymore, especially if you're working in the business. So the other indicators to get what that sort of multiplier is can be what are other businesses being sold for on that market and what maybe other finances and lenders and bankers are lending on those businesses, on those multipliers. So they're kind of an external pressure that'll cap a business value. If you're doing sort of a service-based trade business, cleaning, garden care, tools, you've got weekly and monthly clients, maybe a couple of cars, there'll be a cap that a bank will lend on. So they might only do 1.1 or 1.2 if you're working in the business. If you've got a whole team, you've got a manager, and someone doing admin, they might get it up to 1.5 because there's really not many assets in that business. So that's an external pressure. And then the internal pressure would be, your involvement in the business as well. So the formula for capitalization approach is basically your involvement with your earnings times a multiplier. So the formula or the factors that really will determine the value using a capitalization of earnings approach is your involvement plus your earnings. Now, with your involvement, if your business is completely undermanaged and you'll have a general manager in place, you'll have other type managers in there, you'll have someone doing the admin work, you're really not doing anything at all except receiving your reports, then it would be considered undermanaged and it would be taken as what's called an EBITDA approach. And that's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Now, if you are involved in the business, which a lot of small business owners are, then we would take a PIBDA approach. And that's just proprietor's earnings. So that would be, as I suggested early in the video, your involvement and what you're taking as a wage and the other add backs put in there. Now, PIBDA usually caps out at 2. You never really see any more than 2. And this current climate, what are we in? July 2022, coming out of COVID, but still in it, kind of, the never ending. We're seeing that 2 come right down to sort of a 1.5 or even 1. EBITDA approaches, you can get from 2 to 3, but sometimes less and sometimes more. So just to use quick examples of the most common method, if you're an owner, you're working in the business posts a net profit of $60,000, you've taken a wage of $100,000, you've got $10,000 as well in super, so that's $150,000, and you've got some depreciation, some interest, some private motor vehicle costs that you run through there, and basically we can show that the business served you about $200,000 of income. So you're working in there, you've got, you're doing your 30 or 40 or 50 hours, you'll probably get somewhere between a 1.5, depending on the industry and what's happening with the lending. So that would mean your business would come to a value of $350,000. Now, if at a 1.5 multiplier with $200,000 of earnings. So if you have tangible assets, they would be included in this. Usually, there'd probably be, I could consider about $100,000 or less tangible assets. But sometimes people try and sell cars and things outside of their business sale. Now, all you have to ask yourself, can you run your business without those assets? For example, a Boost Juice can't run without their blenders, and they can be $2,000 each. Carpet cleaning businesses can't run without their van. Other businesses on the market usually need those assets in place. So it can be seen as quite greedy, but people sometimes try to do it. Usually it'll just reduce their business more significantly because there's no actual assets in the business to sell. So another weakness that can bring your business down a little bit would be if there's two or more owners in the business leaving. So if you're usually your best employee, and if there's two of you in the business, then you're losing some good labor out of the business when the new owner takes over. That might affect them, that might not, but the banks will look at that, and so will the buyer when they come through. So just to recap, you've got your involvement is one major factor. If there's more than one owner in the business is another major factor. Its earnings is a big factor, and the assets, if there are in the business, are big factors. They're all internal factors with the business that will then affect external factors like lending. So if a bank or a finance broker or someone can only get you X amount, or 1.1 or 1.2, that's an external factor telling the owner that their business is really only worth 1.1 or 1.2 in that market. If no one can get money to access your business, then you're not going to have very many buyers. So they're the major factors that will always determine the value of your business. The external market's always changing. It's changing so rapidly now with COVID. What they were lending on 3 months ago is not what they're lending on right now. But if you would like to learn more about what your business might be worth on the market, click through or call me directly, and I can give you a free strategy session or roadmap call to talk about where the strengths and weaknesses lie in your business and how we can get the maximum value and in good time, so you can exit the business without stress and move on to other things in your life. All right, I'm Mick Godwin. Thanks for watching. Cheers.